So, welcome to season 3. In this season, we're talking about books. We're going to be discussing insights relating to business and business leadership. And in this first episode, we're taking a look at Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. So, where should we start?
No, welcome to season three as well. And I think the one thing that you haven't mentioned is the fact that we are, for the first time, going to be streaming this live on YouTube. So it's also, season three is also a bit of an experiment for us. Yeah. Anyways, Chris, you got me onto this book, and you had a lot to say about it when you got me onto it. And so in this episode, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. And I'll also be sharing some of my thoughts, but a lot of questions coming your way, so get ready. I know I didn't tell you this before we started, but I thought I'd mention that. So it
Okay.
doesn't look like an ambush.
Brace myself.
Yep. So, and my first question is, if you were going to pitch this to anyone, how would you pitch it?
Yeah, the book, and well,
Yeah, the book.
I think one of the key things for me was how the fact that, from a business perspective, was how by forcing people into very specific time slots, you decrease the efficiency of the people who work for you. And that decrease could be somewhere between 40 to 60%. If you've got people who are like morning people and they come in early and they work, that tends to be the norm in business. People are celebrated for showing up early. But there are other people who work better later in the day, and they're just not that effective early in the morning. So you just lose all this efficiency. So if you can, where you can give more flexibility, and I think the pandemic has helped in that respect. In the lockdowns helped to introduce more flexibility into the working environment, has possibly meant that you get more efficiency from people choosing their own times to work. It doesn't work in every situation or in every industry. If you've got crisis centers, 24/7 operations that have to be staffed around the clock, then you do need people in those, to cover every time slot. But if you can allow people to perhaps self-select into time slots that work best for them, and then don't keep rotating those shifts out of some notion of fairness, is it fair to take someone who's a night owl and force them to work early in the morning? Doesn't seem fair to me. If there are other people who prefer to work in the morning, give them the morning slots, give the night owls the evening slots, and try and even it out that way, and you'll get better effect. You'll get more efficiency out of your workforce.
Yeah, no, I imagine, that could become a bit of a challenge, especially for a business that doesn't lend itself to maybe shift type work. But I did, I remember one job that I had where there were some folks who came in later in the day, but the reason that was done was more to help with, logistics and traffic, just because, moving during peak hours for some people was a little bit difficult, and that was why that was done. But are you suggesting, for instance, as a business leader, we should maybe consider separating our workforce based on their, I don't know, their sleep profile?
Workforce, perhaps not, but I think it's a question of designing the business, isn't it? Design the business around humans rather than force the humans to fit in around the business side. You can't. It's not an absolute, is it? But if you design the business and design your business model around humans, you will have higher engagement from your staff. You will have higher stickiness. They're less likely to leave you for a company that doesn't offer that human-centered design. And you'll have probably better mental health and better mental well-being, or just health and well-being generally, for people who can work more to their own rhythms. We can improve society in a sense.
No, look, I can see how that potentially works, and my brain is running quickly, and I'm trying to figure out. Okay, look, I got a couple of clients, and I'm probably going to see how suggest how this could help their business. And so, if I'm trying to figure this out, so if I'm trying to figure out, okay, look, who's an early person, who's a late person. Are there tests that we could do, or is this the kind of stuff where you just send out a survey, you know, tell us your profile, or when, or do we ask questions like when do you
Wait,
prefer to work?
I suspect that there are sort of questionnaires or surveys one could do, or even design for that. That's quite an interesting thought to create something like that. Um, but I think generally, I mean, I know I'm not a morning person. I'm an evening person. I get my creative spurt at about 8 o'clock in the evening. Now, it probably helps that in the evenings you're probably not in a work environment. You haven't got lots of interruptions, and that's where the human-centered design thinking maybe comes into this. Is how much of the efficiency loss that you get in a business is due to people working in their ideal times, and how much of it is actually just the practices people have of getting in each other's way, that creating interference in the job. Um, yeah, so it's difficult perhaps to spot that, um, without a bit more analysis. I think there may be some a bit of applied neuroscience that one can fit into this, and have a conversation with someone around that. That would be interesting. I can think of one or two.
You know, I mean, it sounds interesting because I'm a morning person, and I know once it starts to get dark, 6, 7, you know, everything kind of slows down. If I have to work late, I do, but it's definitely not my preference. And if at night when it becomes quiet, I fall asleep just like that, you know. So I know if I push anything to later in the day, I'll probably have to do it again in the morning if for it to
Yeah,
make sense, you know. So okay,
yeah.
no, I like that.
I think there's a lot. If we think of us humans a bit like a smartphone almost. You start off in the morning. If you remember to stick it on charge overnight, you start off with the full battery. With full capability. And then if you're trying to operate, when your battery is drained, there will be mistakes. There will be errors. You introduce
Yeah,
extra risk.
absolutely.
So I think it's yeah. I mean, the Western world is chronically sleep deprived. I mean, this is something which is discussed quite often in the media, but people don't, I think, realize quite how damaging and dangerous that could be. I mean, driving jobs are one of the worst cases. I'm sort of heading off on a tangent here. Well, it's a related tangent. Um, one of the experiments, not experiments, that one of the research pieces they did, that it's reported in the book, is where they tested the effect of sleep deprivation. Now, wait, let me just take a step back here. If you force people to work in particular times, let's say you have to get them up early, but they're night people, so they don't go to sleep early enough to get a full night's sleep to show up at 7 in the morning in a banking job or something. Um, then they're going to become chronically sleep deprived, and
Right.
one of the effects of that is people who chronically got getting enough sleep. It has a biochemical and physical effect on the brain. What does this mean? Well, the experiment they did, they took four groups of people. One group, full 8 hours of sleep. Second group, only 4 hours of sleep. Third group, they took them to the legal limit of inebriation, so 80 milligrams per liter, whatever it is in the UK, but other measures in other countries exist, I'm sure. But it's an experiment, right? So third group at the legal limit, so not over the legal, at the legal limit, and the fourth group sleep deprived and at the legal limit, so 4 hours of sleep and, as I said, that alcohol concentration. They then tested them driving for what they call off-road deviations. So that's where the driver is, not driving well. They're going off-road. It's done on a simulator. It's not done on a real road.
Okay.
Important to note. Right. The first group had a negligible number of off-road deviations. The second group, the sleep-deprived group, 4 hours on that night, was 6 times more likely to go off-road. The inebriated group also about the same, six times more likely to go off road. The group that were both inebriated and sleep deprived were 30 times more likely to go off road. Now, when you think about that, so you can see it obviously compounds when you have the two. But when are people most likely to have a drink? Late in the evening. If they're
Right.
chronically sleep deprived and it's late, is it any surprise that the highest number of road traffic accidents that are due to, whatever, either case, are happening on Friday nights, Saturday nights? Statistically, that's when most of them happen. It's no real surprise, is it? And the two factors that operate, the two of the factors that are going on at that time. One is if you're mildly inebriated, your reaction times are slow. So, if there's a situation developing when you're driving, your reactions won't be as quick as they would be if you were, completely clear of alcohol in your system. When you're sleep deprived, you get these things called micro sleeps. So that's when you just momentarily sleep. Your brain just switches off. So there's nobody there.
Right.
So with the inebriation, reactions are slow. It takes you time to respond. With a micro sleep, there's nobody there. There's no one in charge of the vehicle. So when you come back, as it were, you wake up again, your position has moved, because if you're driving, your position has moved. You've got to recalibrate. You've got to rework out, your brain has to rework out the trajectories of direction and what's happening in front of you. And it's got to catch up. And it's tired, so it's going to be slower. And if you've got both of those factors going at the same time, is it any wonder that the consequences can be rather dramatic? So how does that affect business? Well, there's a lot of businesses that have drivers. It's worth thinking about what's the effect. What effects is that having on the safety, health and safety of your people, on the people around them? If you're driving, you could be driving on roads. It affects others. So there's the well-being aspect. There's your insurance. What would it do to your insurance if you could eliminate the accidents that happen in your fleet? And I knew a guy who was a new dad, right? And he worked in the banking industry. He was a trader. He was chronically sleep deprived because he had a new baby at home. It's a common experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as a result of his impact on his cognition, he traded the wrong side of a trade a couple of times for the business, for the bank he worked for, with the resulting losses in the millions. So this is really important stuff for the the bottom line of your business.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like that. I like that example because what I was going to ask you, where I was going to go to is, okay, look, I can see the impact on drivers, but a lot of businesses don't have, drivers, or that's not a big component of their business. So, but I wanted to test a couple of things. The first one being, on performance. How does, when you think of things like strategic decision making, what kind of impact does lack of sleep have on a business?
Well, apart from the well-being things we were talking about, perhaps, I think that the more tired your brain is, the more difficult it becomes to take that abstraction from multiple sources of information. When you're relaxed and refreshed, you're able to synthesize information better. You're able to take many different sources and integrate them together to come to a decision about something.
Am I able to, is it that I'm not able to make decisions, or my options are limited? I mean, I'm trying to I'm thinking, putting my shoes in someone listening who's running a business, someone who's, maybe pride themselves on, oh yeah, I only go on 4 hours of sleep, I get my coffee on, and I'm golden. I mean, what potential impact what kind of damage potentially is happening to the business when you have that kind of combination?
I think one of them is likely to be missed opportunities, because I think
Okay.
the more compromised your processing is. If you think of Yeah, think in terms of a computing system running on low power because you've got low storage of energy if you haven't had your sleep. Um, Caffeine's effect, waking up effect, doesn't increase your cognition. It just it increases your alertness temporarily
Right.
chemically. So um, if anything, it's narrowing your focus, which has its uses. If you're doing a single very precise activity of some kind, then yeah, it might be beneficial. But in business, it's creativity that, generally speaking, is at certain levels of business. It's the it's what makes the difference to your success in as a as an enterprise. It's creativity is crucial to your success. I don't know why it pops into my mind, but Google has 20% this thing called 20% time, where its engineers are allowed to work on anything, creatively work on anything they'd like to, anything that's interesting to them. Um, to be able, you'll be at your most creative when you've got um, all of your assets available to you, all of your capabilities are fully, as it were, charged up. Um, Gmail, Google AdWords, these came out of those creative 20% times, not out of some kind of strategic thing. Well, what we need to do next is invent an email system. No, it was someone in the environment at Google who said, I don't like these other email systems. How about we make our own one? And they started building their first examples, their MVPs, and they built it out. And it's the biggest mail platform in the world today. So I think the impact of poor sleep or poor sleep habits reduces creativity overall, um, amongst many other things. But creativity, I think, in a business context, is one of the most important.
Okay, okay. No, thanks for that. The other thing I picked up from the book as I was reading it was the impact on, your ability to learn and your memory and all of that stuff. What do you think about that? Or do you want to say more about that with respect to,
Yeah,
again, business?
yeah. Business, but yes, of course, it affects everywhere. In business, we're constantly learning. If you're new to a business and you're just joining it, you need to learn the culture of that business, and you need to get under its skin. You need to learn what is actually in this new job. You need to learn your environment, your stakeholders. All of that's all learning. What they discovered in the research, and they talk about it in the book, is how sleep consolidates your learning. So if you I'm just going to pick a musical instrument for now. If you're learning a musical instrument and you're practicing and you're going at it again and again and again, and you're trying to learn a passage and you just aren't getting it, the best thing you can do is sleep on it. And then next day you come back to it and you discover that suddenly it's easier. Now everyone's had
Right.
this experience. They don't always know it's present to it, but they've had that experience when they tried to. It could be a technical thing. Maybe it's your golf swing, or whatever it might be. Something that has there's a learning aspect to it that you work at it with repetition. But repetition alone isn't enough. Your brain needs time to unravel the bits that didn't work, keep the bits that did, and they become the effect of that is the next time you try, you suddenly notice the difference. That suddenly there was a step change, and all you did was sleep. The only
Yeah.
difference was you slept. So there is an effect on that. It takes a full cycle of sleep to do it, though. If you're one of these 4 hours, 6 hour a night people, you're not going to get the full benefit of that because your brain isn't going through all of the cycles it needs to do the different functions that the brain does. The whole circadian rhythm bit is incredibly important. I mean, if we think about how that works, genetically, as it were, evolutionarily, we've grown up through a rhythm up until the last couple of 100 years in the Industrial Revolution. We grew up with rhythms which were determined by daylight. It was bright during the day, it was dark at night. If you're lucky, you had
Yeah.
candles, you had a fire or whatever. If you're in a cave, you had a fire. And the difference in light intensity between firelight and daylight's 20,000 lumens ish, 10 to 20,000 lumens. Firelight is about 6 to 900 lumens. So it's massive, massive. thousands of percent different here. Don't take my maths. Um, so, but now in the modern day, what do we do now? Well, we work in dimly lit offices and bright, and and at night we're in brightly lit homes. I mean, some offices are very brightly lit as well now, but um, so that has a big impact, and evolution hasn't had a chance to necessarily catch up with all of that. It's only been a couple of 100 years since we've had electric light, right? So that's that's a major difference in how the body reads what it needs to do when. If you and you may have heard of experiments done where people were prevented from sleeping at all, and the body just starts to break down after a few weeks. It just everything shuts down and breaks because it
Mm.
hasn't had a chance to do the repair cycles. And your brain's the same. Your brain needs to clean out every day, ideally every night. And that cleaning cycle, that brainwashing that should happen every night, that you know you've chosen the wash cycle, but that brainwash only starts to happen after 6.5 hours of sleep. So if you never get to that 6.5 hours, your brain never gets a chance to do the clean out, to wash out all the byproducts of respiration in the brain, which is the process of turning sugars into energy, and that's a combustion process. Chemically it leaves residue that's got to be cleaned out. There's a strong correlation that suggests that if you can't do that, if the brain doesn't get the opportunity to do that, that what you're probably looking at is Alzheimer's and dementia, because that's where you find this buildup of the myeloid and amyloid plaque. And this is what gets left over if the brain can't clean it out.
Now, that's very interesting. So basically, sleep cleans your brain. Well, no, no, enough sleep
That's it.
cleans your brain. So you got to get enough good night rest, which is anything between 7 to 8 hours. I mean, one of the lessons. I mean, I wouldn't say from the book, but one of the lessons I've observed from my career has been around the impact of sleep on productivity. Because what used to happen, especially when I was in banking and also consulting, is this is when you work late into the night. One of the things I discovered was the rate of mistakes in the document increases significantly, and then you end up when you wake up, when you get back to the document, you have to do rework. And if you're familiar, if you're in a manufacturing environment, rework is what everybody frowns against because that's very expensive. But obviously, in a people business, no one is specifically measuring rework so long as it doesn't get to the client, right? Because if it doesn't get to the client, well, then it's fine. But what I found was I started to, when I start to feel tired when I'm working, I just stop, and I go to sleep. And then as soon as I wake up, I go back to what I was doing. And I did it much faster than the rate at which I was going when I was getting tired. And I used to put that down to, oh yeah, I'm getting tired and stuff. But I also see how, look, the body recognizes it's time to sleep, go and sleep, right? Now, the body expects you to give it a certain amount of sleep. If you don't give it that amount of sleep, it's almost as if you didn't go to sleep, and I've noticed that on days where I don't get enough sleep, I mean, throughout the entire day, I'm having to rely on, coffee or some other stuff to just. I'm not falling sleepy. I'm not feeling sleepy. I'm just to stay awake, like stay switched on. So yeah. Look, I mean, I think for me, I get all the benefits and all of the lessons that are in there. I guess the real question is, first, as a business leader, how do I start to think about, because it's okay if you as a business leader, if you sleep well, but how do you start to get a culture of, well rested
Mm.
people in your business? What are practical ways of starting to think about that and get into the business? Because it's all well and good to know all of the benefits, but if you can't implement it, if you can't implement it, then it's kind of useless to you.
Yeah, I think there's a very strong business cultural element of this. I mean, as you say, in banking, there was this this culture, I suppose, yeah, macho kind of culture where we party late into the night, but we're still up early in the morning, and that bizarrely, when you understand what the damage it does, has been celebrated for years, hasn't it? So I think there's work to be done to break down that idea as a positive. It's not a positive thing to be running on empty. Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were famous for their boasts about minimum sleep. And what happened to them? They both had very serious dementia at the end of their lives, and that's no fun for them. It's no fun for anyone around them. The cost of society is huge. So I think education is the answer. It's usually the answer, and it's certainly the answer in this case. Education, so that people are aware of the need for proper rest, proper sleep, and you lead from the top. You lead from the top, and you encourage an environment in which people can question those practices in your business. If you
Okay.
find that your business really needs people at certain times, then think about how can you design around that. How can you either, maybe if it's a time zone, if it's a shift thing, could you staff that proportion of your business from a different time zone? We live in an international, always on world with, connected by the internet. If you need someone who's going to be working, from 5 o'clock in the evening till midnight, London time, do they have to be in the UK? Or could you pick some, could you work with, someone in the Americas, because that's their normal natural daytime in the Americas. Connectivity is not really that much of an issue now, really. Um,
Okay. No, I mean that's interesting. So I mean, so the lessons I'm kind of taking away, first of all, is as the business leader, you've got to promote, this idea of, getting enough rest and refreshing your brain as a way, as a lifestyle first and foremost, because if you're not doing it, there's no point talking about it. The second bit is then education. You've got to just educate people on the importance of sleep in terms of, their ability to perform better at work
mm,
and to, to do things better. Oh, the one thing I also say as a business leader is you can't be asking people to sleep and then be promoting the, I guess, the damaging environment of, yeah, we get things done
mm.
there's this idea of, oh, we can get things done irrespective of the cost. So we walk till whenever to get whatever
Yeah,
you need to get to you. So,
yeah.
I mean, you
I,
get the point I'm making.
yeah, I do, and I think we can it culturally. I think it. Why not ask your own people? Ask the people who are doing the job to come up with better ways of fitting it into that model of a well-designed work environment that's not going to be physically and mentally damaging. I think there are companies who are going to really worry that if they admit to this being an issue, that they could be leaving themselves open to legal challenges on well-being. But I'd say sort this out now. Don't leave it. Don't leave it till later.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there are ways to deal with it without necessarily saying it's an issue. It's, we're learning new ways and we're saying, okay, look, I think we think it's important for people to start to get more sleep and, you can implement that culture change
Yeah, and
without
can you imagine?
necessarily opening yourself
Yeah,
to liabilities.
yeah, can you imagine how sticky that makes your work environment for your staff if you're doing that? Your staff will
Yeah.
never want to leave because where are they going to get this elsewhere? At least for the next several, who knows how long. Um, and when you think that, if you've got an employee that's earning around, 40K, to replace that employee is going to cost you as a business, according to calculations done by one of the HR groups. I'd have to find the link for you. That the real cost of that isn't just, okay, we've got 25% of their salary for a recruiter to find a new one. There's the cost of the hiring manager, the leaders in that organization who have to redefine the role, interview people, make offers, train them when they arrive, and all the distractions. The real cost is about 130,000 to replace one person whose salary is around the 40K mark. So every time you keep someone, it's protecting 130 plus grand of your bottom line as a business. So how can you afford not to consider things like this that are going to make your business more attractive to keep people, to keep you good people
No,
in your
I mean,
business?
no, I completely agree with you. And for anyone listening, I mean, there you have it. The Power of Sleep is, is an exciting book for you to read, and there's so much to learn from that book. So, I mean, we've been going for a while now. So, Chris, I mean, I'll give you the final word in this, since you're the expert on sleep. What would you? I'll give you the final word.
Right. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway on this is the is how getting that 7.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep opportunities, it's called, how important that is to your own health and well-being, and as a consequence, how important it is to your performance, ultimately your opportunities, the creativity. It's you could say it's a no-brainer. if you if you don't get the sleep, you are going to end up, having no brain.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I get the book, get some
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah, but
And I guess I don't know, Chris. If folks are not subscribed to our podcast. I guess we could put the link in the show notes
yep,
for all the other
yep.
episodes.
We can put the link to the we'll put the link to our Biz and Coffee podcasts of all the different there we're there in all the usual pod grabbers. Just search for Biz and Coffee and you'll find us. Nice red tile with a microphone on it. And the book, we'll put a link for the book in the chat. There's lots of resources around that you can Google for. I think the key thing is realize the importance of it and make sure that your nearest and dearest get this too, because it's too important to just let it go by. So, grab on.
Excellent. Thank you for your insight, Chris.
Okay, and then we'll see. So do like and subscribe if you have the opportunity to, depending on your platform, to do a review. That's great. Please do. Apple Podcasts do it. Spotify, you can do reviews. That really helps us get known and get out there.
Yeah.
And so with
Thank
that, I
you.
guess that's a wrap for today, and we'll see you next time.
All right.